thing on? I guess it is. Wow. Okay. So first off, Ruby Midwest, huh? This is pretty cool. It's my first time here. And I just want to take some time real quickly to thank Wes and the rest of the organizers and volunteers because this has been awesome so far. So thanks, guys. So I want to talk to you a little bit about optimizing for happiness. Working in the Ruby programming language, we know a lot about optimizing for happiness. It's kind of ingrained in our DNA to some degree. I actually had a really great time with everybody last night at the get together, the shindig, if you will, and made some new friends. Oh, by the way, this talk originally is supposed to be 45 minutes long, so this one is optimized for time. So it should be optimization for happiness optimized for time. I made some new friends. I made some new friends last night, Laura and Willis. Laura said to me, has anybody ever told you you look like? I said, John Travolta, yes. Next question. So getting that out of the way. There may have been an offer of money for me to put this slide up there from Willis. I'm not sure. Anyway, I live socially. And if you want to live socially too, you should talk to me afterwards. I'm not leaving until tomorrow, so please do. This is my biggest fan, and since I can get a little bit nervous when I'm under pressure, I thought I would put this up here. My mom, she's funny because she says I'm interesting to listen to. She didn't say I'm a good speaker. She just said I'm interesting to listen to. She's really supportive. She's awesome. So is this talk really necessary? I mean, don't we know how to be happy? Is this talk really necessary? Yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But really, I guess you could probably say that needs some explanation. I think it's necessary because this is me at 5 years old. I have been immersed in electronics for as long as I can remember. I have loved the stuff. My parents at 5 got an Atari 2600. I was a total fanboy. You want to see how much of a fanboy I was? This is me playing E.T., the worst Atari game of all time. Wearing an E.T. shirt. And if that's not engrossed, I don't know what is. I'm having a great time. About a year later, my folks bought me a TRS-80 Color Computer 2, Coco. 2. Awesome computer. Intuitive placement of the arrow keys on the keyboard at the left and the right. This was the first time in my life where I actually got a chance to realize that I could actually create the video games that I enjoyed playing so much. And how many of you guys, just a show of hands, have gotten into programming because of video games in some way, shape, or form? See that? You know what? Screw you, society, telling us that we're wasting our time. You guys are all productive members of society today because of video games. Awesome. And then, so all through life, I was writing programs. I would go to the library at my school, and I would pick up books on how to program, and you type in all that. And they would have those little appendixes, if people remember this, where they would say, like, okay, it's home if you're on Apple, and it's like CLS if you're on Candy Basic, and all this other stuff. So I did this all my life, and then I built my first computer. Now, this is very similar to the computer that I built, a Dual P2, and at the time that I built it, how many of y'all have built computers before? Right. So it's basically like putting together a jigsaw puzzle that's comprised of parts that cost hundreds of dollars. So it's a little bit stressful, especially. I bought a whole lot of parts here to build this machine, and I spent money I didn't have on things that would depreciate so quickly that by the time I unboxed them, they were worth half of what I paid, because I'm not that bright. So I built this computer, and I just agonized over every little part that I put into it, right? I'm sorry. I'm going to move. So when I was putting the computer together, I checked every single connection. I mean, I just went over it with a fine-tooth comb, because I was terrified that the first time I turned it on, I would now be poor and also have no computer. And what I found out after 15 minutes of putting the thing together, I pressed the power button and nothing happened. So I spent another 15 minutes. I just yanked everything out, reseat everything, check every connection. And I'm just completely obsessed over what could be wrong. And I'm thankful so far that I didn't smell smoke. And so for those of you who haven't built a computer, I'm going to share you an important tip. What I found out was that in order to power on a desktop computer, it is important to plug it into the wall socket. So I guess the reason that I think this talk is necessary is because when you have a certain level of familiarity, you can do pretty stupid things. And so sometimes And yes, I put this on 2 slides for a reason. I am an idiot. You can take photos now. Okay. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all are idiots sometimes. I mean, how many times have we spent an hour or two debugging something to find out that we left off a trailing period or something somewhere? Yeah, I have this method called chained out over 2 lines, except it's not. It's really calling nothing on the next line or whatever. So we make bad assumptions whenever we write code. We skip steps when we write code. And we use TDD to save ourselves from this, right? So we have this process designed around red-green refactor, a pattern. And for some reason, we're great at doing that with code. We obsess about it. But we completely suck at doing it with our life. We don't stop and think and set goals and figure out ways to improve things for ourselves. So I've written a spec here. So I'm done with that. If you don't like this, I got your mini test right here. All right. So what do you think of this test? It's not very granular, is it? And this is kind of the way that we approach life in a lot of ways. We get up every day and we go about our business, and then we just kind of think, am I happy? And it's a Boolean, right? It's true, false. We don't think about it in smaller steps oftentimes. And I think that's a problem. So when we think about what the red-green refactor steps are really about, in the first case, whenever we write something red, we describe the thing that we want, right? We make it clear what it is we're going for. And when we make it green, we make it real. And then we make it better as we refactor in some way, shape, or form. So what does better really look like? Well, you need to wrap some sort of metrics around that, right? Otherwise, how can you possibly describe one thing as better than another? And so since the talk is called The Most Important Optimization Happiness, I'm going to posit that the thing that makes it better is that it makes you more happy. So when I first started thinking about this talk, I sat down and I made a huge list of things that I thought made me happy in some way, shape, or form. And I was hoping to find a common thread so that I could say, well, here are some metrics that I can measure. And I came up with a list. And then when I got my talk accepted, I figured, I got to get up in front of a bunch of people and say, I know something about this, so maybe I should do some research. So you might have heard of this site, which is a great place to find information. And the thing that I learned from Wikipedia is this. First off, psychologists are really an interesting bunch. Yeah, they are. So if you research happiness on Wikipedia, you find out that there's a movement now called positive psychology. And positive psychology is stepping back. In traditional psychology, they followed a disease model. So let's say things really suck for you, like you're a -8 on a scale of -10 to 10, right? They would try to bring you to a -2 and say, success, we have made things better. Things suck less for this individual. And then at some point, the concept of positive psychology came out. And maybe we can use psychology to actually improve people's lives, figure out what makes their brains tick, what makes them happy, and maybe take them into the positive numbers somewhere. So maybe now they're a 3 or a 4, and that's certainly better than a -7, and it's better than a -2. So let's try that. So this dude right here, Dr. Martin Seligman, is considered the father of positive psychology. Now, he's actually 70 years old right now. But when I found this photo online, this is how I'm going to imagine him for the rest of my life. This guy knows how to have a good time. So he has an acronym he refers to as PERMA, and he says that happiness is just one aspect of the whole picture, right? So happiness is the positive emotions piece, and then he says engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement all are separate things. I think that when normal people like you and me talk about happiness, all of that stuff factors in. Engagement is like flow for us, right? The idea of doing something challenging that is also really enjoyable. And so I found this really frustrating and kind of boring. And I read through it for a while, and I got to thinking, I can't really apply this to my life in some meaningful way. And so I was really frustrated that this pretty much turned up a dead end. And then I remembered I had made this list before. And I like my list better than his, of course, right? Because, well, right. So I was really bored, and I decided this was better. So here's what it boils down to in my list, anyway. Happiness comes down to 3 axes, essentially. Resources to do stuff, stuff to do, and people to do stuff with. And that's really super simple, right? But it's not all that catchy. I could rearrange it and come up with SRP, I suppose, as an acronym, but that one's already taken. So I know acronyms and pictures help us to remember things, and so because of that, I have given you not just an acronym, but a picture, CAR, and the freaking Batmobile, so you will not forget this acronym. CAR stands for capacity, activities, and relationships. Those 3 things, the capacity to do stuff, or the resources to do stuff, activities, the stuff to do, and relationships, the people that you're going to do the stuff with. And those 3 things really, when you look back on your life, are the things that are going to really resonate with you. What are your experiences? And even if you say, oh, no, I like to own nice things, you like the things that you do with the nice things. Or you like telling people you own the nice things. Check out my car. It's awesome. The Batmobile. So this is my idea, kind of how this works. But Marty is riding shotgun. And so if I could just kind of outline a few things about capacity. So there's time, money, and physical and mental capacity. These are a few. These are non-exhaustive lists, right? But if you want to talk about your capacity to do things, these are some big ones. Time is not money. People like to say that. Time can often be exchanged for money, but the exchange rate is different for various people. And so I really fiercely guard my time. I take care of, if I'm going to waste time, I want it to be on my terms. It's not that I don't waste it, I just choose to do it my way. And I think it's important to note that because I think we as developers oftentimes, especially those of us that work 18-hour days, whenever we're in crunch mode, really undervalue our time. We give short shrift to it, and that's unfortunate. So from an activity standpoint, they might be fun, they might be challenging. If you could hit on some activity that you could perform that would be all of these things, then you're doing great. And on a relationship standpoint, we have relationships that are both romantic, professional, family, and friends as well. But these are not just the relationships, but the potential for said relationships. That is, you can be closer to your family if you live one place, for instance, or you can have more potential romance interests if you live in one area of the country. So I think of it kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you guys are familiar with this, the general idea is that you get diminishing returns whenever you start to hit some particular level of satisfaction on any one of these tiers, right? So physiological, food, being able to eat. If you don't know where your next meal is coming, you're probably not too worried about your self-esteem right that moment. On the flip side, you don't necessarily have to be eating filet mignon before you care about safety and that somebody isn't going to break in and murder you in your sleep. So I think what it really comes down to is that you try to figure out what your ideal balance of these aspects of your life might be, and you begin to be intentional about the decisions that you make. And so if we can define some metrics around which we can go about the red-green refactor cycle, then we can start to run our specs. We can start to think about, what is it that we are doing today that is improving our situation over where we were yesterday. And running your specs is different for everyone. The main thing I would encourage you to do is think about what you're thankful for. And if you can do this on a daily basis or more often, that's great. Think about what you're worried about. For me personally, it's when I pray. For someone else, it may be when they meditate, and after they're done, they just have this clarity. Or maybe you just take some time in the car to reflect in silence on sort of what's going on in your life. But having the best spec suite ever, or test suite if you're a mini-test fan, it's not going to do you jack squat if you're not actually running it now and again. It's great to look at, but it's not going to do anything. So I would say at that point, you want to start to find things that you can get that are easy wins, that are going to have some kind of an impact across the entire board, right? Exercise, nutrition, and sleep. These things are huge. See what I did there? These three things, if you focus on them, will have a kind of a cascading effect for the rest of your life. And if you can only pick one of them, pick exercise, because you will sleep better if you're exhausted, and you will also eat better, because I learned this firsthand. Actually, a lot of this stuff I've learned firsthand. This is pretty much a story about all the stupid things I've done, but that didn't sound as catchy as optimizing for happiness. If you get exercise in there, you're going to take better care of yourself because you will feel like crap after you work out if you're not getting the right fuel in you. So After that, you would start to say, okay, so here are these three axes we talked about earlier: relationships, activities, capacity. If I can find things that have an impact on all three of those things at once, positive or negative, I should probably focus on them, give them some thought, right? Turns out there is one thing that pops out almost immediately as something that can have an aspect in all of those areas of your life, and it's location. Where you choose to live has a drastic impact on just about every one of those aspects. It determines how far your money goes. It determines how much time you have to spend to get to your job if you need to work on site. And so I want to play a little game with you because I don't want to be all like sciencey and talk about these acronyms and all that the whole time. You guys remember these? Spot the difference. You would get two pictures and you would look at the differences between them and try to find all of them and circle them, and then there would be an answer key somewhere and you'd feel really smart, right? I loved these things when I was a kid. Like some of you have already said, the guy on the right doesn't have hair, right? So I want to play a little game with you. Here are two code samples. I just want to show those to you briefly, and I want you to spot the subtle difference between the two if you can. So the difference is, the one on the left was coded in Louisville, Kentucky. and the one on the right, San Francisco. That was really not fair, I'm sorry. Okay, here's one that's a little easier. Now, it looks like I'm picking on San Francisco here. I hope that what you get out of this talk is that you have to look at what's right for you. If San Francisco is where you want to be, then you should definitely be there. That being said, there are some pretty big trade-offs in this situation. For me, where I live, I would rather be able to be comfortable and have less salary and still be able to make ends meet. I don't want a ridiculous cost of living. So for me, Louisville is a great fit. I'm not saying it's the best fit for all of you, though if you want to come visit sometime, I have a guest room. So the impact of physical location on your quality of life, I'm going to tick off all the boxes there that actually has impact on. You can see it's pretty drastic. On the flip side, I have another handy graph here, handy chart, that shows the impact of physical location on your value to an employer. Now, I should probably say there's an asterisk there. It is for qualified employers only. And what does a qualified employer look like? Well, for starters, if it's all on-site folks and they're hiring like one remote developer, that's probably not a great employer to be a remote developer for, because you're going to get left out of the loop a lot. On the flip side, I think a lot of employers actually have a pretty good sense of it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? So sometimes there are situations where you need FaceTime with an employer. As it turns out, Apple's written this really cool software. It's called FaceTime, and it allows you to have FaceTime with other people. You have Google Hangouts, you have Skype, you have chat rooms, and from what I understand, there are even huge metal tubes with chairs in them in which one can sit, be hurtled through the sky at about 600 miles an hour, and then have their face in the same room as other people's faces. It's really amazing stuff. We live in the future, guys. So what I guess I'm getting at is you don't necessarily have to always be in the same physical location as your employer to be very productive. And I did some research on this, and this is data from the US Census Bureau. And actually, if I can't see where Laura is one of these poor schmucks who is in the 90-plus minute one-way. Over 3 million people are 90-plus minute one-way commute to their work. They're spending upwards of 3 hours per day getting somewhere to do their job. To look at another number, 1 in 3 people are actually traveling at least an hour total in a day, both ways, to get to where they need to go to work. How many of you all are traveling at least an hour total whenever you consider both ways to get to your job? Pretty accurate. That sounds about right for just the numbers I see here. That's a problem for me personally, so I would ask you to say, where do you want to be? Is it right for an employer to exert so much force on something that has such a drastic impact on you? And this answer may be different for you than it is for me, and has so little impact on them. I think that for me anyway, the answer was definitely, this is pretty jacked up. I think life is way too short to spend so much of it between the places that you truly want to be. And so I think that what that really means is that you have to figure out a way to make, if you're going to be stuck in a car or on a train or on a bus, you have to figure out a way to make that the place that you want to be, or you have to find a way to not be there. So I don't know, for you, maybe that means you listen to audiobooks, or you listen to podcasts, or you take some time and just reflect, while you're driving, or maybe you just really like to drive. Great, awesome. So one of the things the internet's really good at is telling you when you're wrong. I posted, this talk is largely inspired by a blog post I wrote a while back, and I submitted it to Hacker News because, again, I'm not that bright. And I got this as the top response. And I want to spend some time here because those of you who are either our employers or maybe work for employers that are big against remote work may have heard some arguments like this or have some of them yourself. And I'm just going to want to pick it apart. The single biggest problem with working remotely is that you have to be excellent at a lot of things that don't matter when you're on site. It sets your energy as a zero-sum game. Being excellent at these things steals energy from building. I don't need to read the rest of it right now because we're going to pick it apart. The nice thing about bulleted lists is they're really great to refute systematically. So I'm going to split them into two groups, and these are, as you can see, they have the same order. He actually was really cool about the way he posted this. I don't know if you realized it. I have no idea who this guy is, so if he ever sees these, he's probably going to hunt me down.
He's super nice. I know him in real life.
Okay. So
he's sitting back there.
He's super nice. Great. So the top 5 are in one group, and the bottom 5 are in the other. And I would label the first group wrong, and the second group, what is this? I don't even. So let's start with the bottom group first, because that's a little easier. Dealing with conference calls and web-based meetings. Okay, well, you have to do that pretty much anywhere unless all of your customers always come to your office to work with you. So I don't really know how that's going to change whether you're on-site or off-site. So let's just throw that one out. The next are in two groups of 2. Building relationships without benefit of breaks and meals. And understanding the human terrain without benefit of gossip and the water cooler. So that's politics. And if politics are a major concern for you where you work, run. Run, seriously, get out. It's toxic, you don't want to be there. Being noticed and recognized for who you really are by new people and being included when you're out of sight, out of mind, I can kind of feel for those because I think people that feel that way are oftentimes a bit insecure. I think that they don't feel that they can properly advertise their own value to the company, and instead they rely on other people to sort of see them sitting their butt in their chair for 18 hours working really, really hard. And I feel bad for them. So I can understand, but it's insecurity, and there is help, right? On the wrong side, all 5 of these are basically the same thing. And I'm not going to, you've had time to read them. The whole idea is that it's around written communication, okay? Now, why did I label written communication being wrong for remote workers? It's not wrong. In fact, it's very right, except that this part up here. So written communication doesn't matter if you're on site. You don't need to be a good written communicator. I have news for you. If we can boil this all down to written communication is the big gotcha, programming is written communication. So we have the most literal, freaking annoying listener in the world that we have to communicate with whenever we write software, and it's our interpreter or our compiler. Okay? It takes exactly what we say incredibly literally and does the wrong thing, but it's our fault. On the flip side, we have to write our code in a way that it's intention revealing, that it shows people what it is we intend to do, whether it be via comments or even just via expressive code itself. People are very different. People will detect nuance. People will detect intention. And they make assumptions sometimes. And so we're really doing written communication every time we write code. And that's throwing out all the obvious written communication like email and IMs and all of the other stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis. So what it really comes down to then is that the single biggest problem with working remotely is that you have to be excellent. Now, please raise your hand if you would like to not be excellent. If you want to be awful at your job, if you don't aspire to be excellent, go ahead and raise your hand. And we had one last time. All right, Evan does not wish to be excellent. I'm running really low on time, so let's hustle along here. So you would say, whoa, Ernie, what's this? I mean, I have a day job. I do not have time to go do all this like self-improvement stuff you're talking about. I'm too busy earning a paycheck, bringing home the bacon. It's what I got to do to pay the rent. This is not fair that you're like saying that I have to go figure out how to work as part of a distributed team and be great at written communication and all these other things, because it's not like I can just go somewhere and I can find a place that would just allow me to interact with a distributed team or anything. So open source is a great way to get good at this stuff. If you can convince people to spend their free time hacking on your project for absolutely no financial incentive at all, you're already winning at remote and distributed team leadership. If you can't, find something you can contribute to and start communicating to that project leader and find out what it is that they need and start to work in that regard. So it's really not so hard to beef up your communication skills as you, even if you have a day job. Because I think most of us like to do this stuff on the side anyway. It's not just an 8-hour-a-day thing. We actually really enjoy open source. So party on, because it's really not that hard. So once you realize this, you start to think about the fact that your code is not really your product at all, but you are your product. And you get to be your product manager, which means that you get to determine what features your product has, where your features are offered. Are they only offered out of your living room or on the beach or wherever? That's up to you, right? You're your product manager, and in fact, you have the power. Now, I'm going to stop. I have to stop here. You have no idea. This is not just an image I found. There is a color forms site called the Cartoon Doll Emporium, and I painstakingly assembled these He-Man and She-Ra for you because I love you. So enjoy. It's pretty. So the thing about this is, I think that offends a lot of people, right? Because we start to think that if we are not doing we grew up with parents, right, that had maybe their parents worked in an industry where it was very, very common for people to have worked their entire life at one employer and to have maybe a pension waiting for them when they're done. That's not really the world that we live in. But for some reason, being a good worker became tantamount to patriotism, really. And I think this is courtesy of my inner eighth grader. I'm sorry, I had to have this slide. So we get to think that we're just a teammate with our management, and they really are looking out for us. Even if it's true, and it may be, a lot of employers are really well-intentioned. They can't guarantee their future success. So, by the way, wouldn't life be great if everybody just had who they were written on their butt? It would be a little awkward. It would be a little bit awkward. All political cartoons are like this. I mean, I would personally like mine today, but it would be pretty cool. So job security is this big thing, and like whenever I first made a job change to a smaller company to work in consulting, I actually shared that with my folks, and I said, I am super psyched about this. I've worked in a very enterprising company previous to this, and I'm like, this is going to allow me to do what it is I really want to do. And my parents said, are you sure? I mean, you're giving up this, and it's just their mentality, right? It's where they come from. It's the way that business used to be run. So I would say that job security is a complete myth in this day and age, and that the job security that you have is job security you make yourself. You will sign an employment at will agreement in any job you take, and it means that you can leave anytime and they can let you go at any time. And so I think that people tend to focus on that job security thing, and it's neat because it allows you to stay in a job for a long time, and then you start to look like the smartest guy in the room because you know all of this goofy stuff that you only know because you've been there so long, and that makes the brain feel really good, right? But I would say that you should strive to feel stupid. The reason you should strive to feel stupid, not be stupid, but feel stupid, right, is because if you feel stupid, you're uncomfortable, you're stretching yourself in a way. The fact that I'm actually up here on stage right now talking to you is because I wanted to do something that made me feel stupid, right? I didn't think I could do it, so I got up and I tried it, and it turns out, I don't know, maybe I'm okay. You let me know on speaker rate later. But it's really important to stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone, because that's the only way you grow. And if you are stagnating in some way and you're just getting comfortable, for me anyway, I get dumber every day that I do that. So this is my favorite illustration of this. This is from Quora. There's an anonymous poster on Quora that answered this question about what is it like to always be the smartest person in the room, and they said it sucks. It means you're in the wrong room, and I think that's the best answer ever. I think it's really important that, that you stretch yourself and you get around people, whether that be online or off, that challenge you to get better at what you do. I would also say this. Money oftentimes becomes a factor whenever you're looking at making a job change or evaluating whether a job's for you. It's really tricky because the thing about money is that there's this concept, and this is from positive psychology as well. It's called the Hedonic Treadmill. Have you heard of it? It's the concept that if you actually hit some level of happiness or sadness, everything kind of trends towards some baseline for you, right? If you get super happy, you're not going to be able to stay that happy. And so what ends up happening is you get this big salary increase, and you're really super happy about it, and that lasts about 6 months maybe, and then you're back to your baseline. If you're lucky, you get 6 months. And you're no happier than before. And the money, now what you've actually done is counterintuitively locked yourself into a situation where now all this other stuff that would have been incredibly rewarding before is less rewarding because it's actually a small decrease in salary. That's something to really think hard about. I've made the wrong decision in the past, and I'm telling you from experience, don't do it. Don't chase the money. This one was hard for me to make, right? I think that it's also not about the people. Even though I've actually said many, many times, I love the people that I work with. If I truly like those people, I need to be happy for them whenever what's right for them leads them somewhere else. It's really hard to do if the only reason you're at a job is because of the people you work with. So think really long and hard about why it is that you're staying in a position or that you're taking a position. Don't allow things that you don't have any control over, nor should you. You don't have any control over whether your coworkers that you love stick around. Don't allow that to make your decision for you. And why do I care so much about optimizing for happiness anyway? Well, we have one of the most incredible jobs in the world. We start with a blank text editor, and we can create anything. We can create things that are beautiful, things that are powerful, useful, maybe even world-changing. And that's incredibly gratifying on so many levels, and I'm so thankful that I get to be a part of a community that helps me to have that, to make that happen for myself and for others. And I want to do this. I've been doing it since I was 6. I want to do it until I'm 66 or later, until I can't see the screen anymore. And if I'm going to do that, I need to stay happy. I need to enjoy it. I need to get rid of the distractions that make me less happy and focus on the really awesome stuff that we get to do every day because we are so lucky. So I guess I'm back to the beginning then. For me, the happiness is really about plugging in. It's about getting the power that I need to get through the day and to enjoy what I do and continue to do it well. So that's all I've got. Thanks so much.